When I bought the ranch, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful, poetic kind you see in movies. I mean real silence. The kind that makes your ears ring because there's no traffic, no sirens, no neighbors arguing about trash, cans just whined through cedar trees. Cattle shifting in the pasture. And the occasional creak of the old barn that came with the property. 40 acres. That's what I paid for. 40 acres of legally surveyed, deeded, tax-paid land in Cedar Valley Estates, a place that called itself a rural luxury community. The word luxury should have been my first red flag. But I was tired. Tired of city noise. Tired of condo boards telling me what color my curtains could be. Tired of parking wars. So when I saw the listing for Lot 17, bordered by open pasture, a natural creek, and a tree line that stretched like a green wall along the western edge, I signed the papers within a week. The real estate agent smiled a little too hard when she handed me the HOA bylaws. "It's very relaxed," she said. That was the 3 weeks after I moved in I met her. Her name wasn't actually Karen. It was Linda Whitmore. But trust me, she was a Karen in spirit, soul, and haircut. She showed up on a Tuesday morning in a white Lexus SUV, sunglasses perched on her head like a badge of authority. She didn't knock so much as tap on my front door like she was inspecting a rental unit. When I opened the door, she smiled, the tight, judgmental kind. "Hi there. You must be the new owner." "Yes, ma'am."
I'm Linda Whitmore.
President of the Cedar Valley Estates Homeowners Association. Of course she was. She didn't wait to be invited in. Just stepped forward and looked past me into the house like she was evaluating resale value. "I noticed you've started fencing the north pasture." "Yes," I said slowly. "It's my pasture." Her smile stiffened. "Well, technically, it's part of the shared Greenbelt expansion zone." I blinked.
I'm sorry. What?
She adjusted her sunglasses, like she was about to deliver devastating news. The previous board approved a long-term community integration plan. That pasture area has historically been used by residents for walking trails and seasonal events.
Is det här?
I bought 40 acres. Yes, she said gently, like explaining math to a child. But the community has certain easement rights. That was news to me. "Can you show me the easement documentation?" She paused. "It's implied in the development plans." Implied doesn't show up on a property deed. Her smile disappeared completely. "Well," she said coolly, "we'll sort it out." Then she turned and walked back to her Lexus. That was the moment I should have called a lawyer. Instead, I went back to hammering fence posts. It started small. A couple walking their golden retriever along my creek bank. I walked down and told them politely, "Hey folks, this is private property." They looked confused.
Oh.
Linda said this was community land. There it was. She's wrong. They apologized and left. Then it was a group of teenagers riding dirt bikes across my north pasture. Then a yoga class. A literal yoga class. I came home one evening to find 12 women in matching athleisure doing downward dog on my grass, while some instructor chanted about grounding energy.
On my
property. I shut my truck door louder than necessary. "Excuse me." They all turned like startled deer. "This is private land." One woman blinked at me. "Linda reserved it for us." "She doesn't own it." Awkward silence. They packed up their mats. But the next weekend, they were back. And this time, there were folding chairs set up by the creek for a community wine and sunset event. They even put up string lights tied to my oak trees. That was when I drove straight to the HOA office. The HOA office was just a renovated garage attached to Linda's house. Of course it was. 3 board members sat around a folding table with printed agendas. Linda smiled like we were old friends. "Welcome. We were just discussing the harvest social. You need to stop telling people my ranch is community property." Dead silence. One of the board members, an older man who looked like he hadn't disagreed with Linda in 15 years, cleared his throat. "Linda mentioned you were concerned. I'm not concerned. I'm telling you people are trespassing." Linda folded her hands. "The north pasture has always been accessible." "Not anymore." It's part of Cedar Valley's heritage. It's part of my deed. I laid a copy of my property survey on the table. Read boundary lines. Official county stamp. 0 easements. The older man leaned forward. Well, that's inconvenient. Inconvenient. I repeated. Linda's tone sharpened. Mr. Carter, Cedar Valley thrives on community cooperation. You can't just isolate 40 acres in the middle of shared development. I absolutely can. She smiled again. That dangerous, polished smile. We'll review this. My attorney's name was Daniel Ruiz. Former Marine. Real estate litigation specialist. The kind of guy who reads contracts for fun. When I handed him the HOA violation notice, he didn't laugh. He frowned. That's bold, he said. Bold illegal or bold stupid? Both. He adjusted his glasses and flipped through my property deed, survey, and the so-called community access agreement Linda had referenced. There is no recorded easement, he confirmed. Nothing filed with the county. No right-of-way. No shared use clause. Legally speaking, they have 0 claim. Then how are they fining me? Because most people don't fight back. That answer stuck with me. Most people don't fight back. Daniel leaned back in his chair. This looks like an internal HOA resolution passed years ago. It mentions future integration planning and anticipated shared greenbelt expansion. That sounds fake. It's not fake, he said calmly. It's just meaningless without your consent. So they can't enforce it. Not unless you agreed to it when you bought the property. I didn't. We double-checked my closing documents. Nothing.
No addendum. No rider.
No attachment granting access rights. Daniel tapped the violation letter. They're bluffing. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The following Saturday, I woke up to the sound of hammers. Not one hammer. Several. I stepped onto my porch and saw 3 men installing wooden trail markers along the edge of my north pasture. Bright yellow signs that read. My blood went cold. I walked down the driveway. Morning. One of the men said casually. Linda said to mark the trail before the harvest social. You need to stop. He blinked. Excuse me. This is private property. He looked confused. We were told this was approved community space. It's not. He hesitated. Look, ma'am, sir.
Sir.
We're just doing what we were hired to do. Then I suggest you call the person who hired you. One of them stepped aside and dialed. I could hear Linda's voice through the phone. Yes, it's approved. No, I said loudly. It isn't. A pause. Then she said, put him on speaker. The man obliged. Mr. Carter. Linda's voice came through smooth and smug. The board voted years ago to integrate that land. You don't own that land. It's for community enrichment. It's trespassing. Silence. Then her tone shifted. You're being unreasonable. I laughed. I paid $1, $2 million for this ranch. And Cedar Valley residents paid for amenities. Not mine. The men stood awkwardly between us. Finally, Linda said, continue the installation. That was her mistake. I called the sheriff's office. 25 minutes later, Deputy Miller pulled up. He stepped out slowly, adjusting his hat. What seems to be the issue? I explained everything. Showed him my deed. My survey. The lack of easements. He walked the property line with me. Then he turned to the contractors. Did you verify ownership before installing signage? They exchanged looks. We were told. I don't care what you were told. He faced them squarely. This is private property. Remove the signs. Linda arrived in record time. She marched across the pasture like a general approaching battle. Deputy, this land is part of Cedar Valley's greenbelt. He didn't even blink. Ma'am, do you have a recorded easement? She hesitated. We have board documentation. That's not what I asked. The silence was delicious. Finally, he said, remove the signs or I'll cite you for trespassing. She glared at me like I'd kicked her dog. But the signs came down. The electric fence went up on a Thursday. Not some cheap farm store wire stapled to wood posts.
No.
This was a professionally installed, code-compliant, solar-powered agricultural system, 3 strands of high-tensile wire,
Propeg runding roots.
warning placards every 20 feet, bright yellow signs that read, private property, no trespassing visible, legal, impossible to ignore. The contractor, a quiet older man named Bill, tested the line with a voltage meter. 6,200 volts, he said.
Non-lethal.
Just persuasive. Good, I replied. He gave me a sideways glance. Expect complaints.
Ugh, Ida.
Saturday evening was the scheduled harvest social. Linda had advertised it for weeks. Wine tasting. Acoustic guitarist. Catered charcuterie tables. Sunset by the creek. My creek. I watched from my porch as cars began lining the gravel road. BMWs, Teslas. One confused Uber driver. People dressed in fall-themed outfits carried folding chairs and picnic baskets toward the north pasture, like it was an annual tradition. They stopped when they saw the fence. Murmurs spread like wildfire. What is this? Was this here yesterday? Why are there warning signs? Then Linda arrived. White linen blouse. Clipboard in hand. That same tight smile. She walked straight toward the fence, heels sinking slightly into the soil. I stayed on my porch. This wasn't my show. It was hers. A group of residents gathered near the fence line. One man poked the wire cautiously. Is it actually on? A woman read the sign aloud. It says electric. Linda waved dismissively. It's intimidation, she said loudly. He's trying to bully the community. She reached for the wire. I almost admired the confidence. Almost. Her fingers made contact. The snap was audible. A sharp, cracking pop followed by a startled yelp that echoed across the pasture. Linda jerked backward like she'd been hit with a rubber bat. Her clipboard flew into the grass. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Oh my God. Is she okay? Linda stood frozen for a second, stunned, clutching her hand. It shocked me, she sputtered. A teenage boy muttered. It says electric. She recovered quickly. I'll give her that. Her face turned a shade red that clashed beautifully with her white blouse. This is assault, she shouted toward my house. Now everyone was looking at me. I walked down the driveway slowly.
Calm.
Hands in my pockets. Evening, folks. Linda pointed at me like a prosecutor. You electrified community land. It's private property, I replied evenly. Clearly marked. You can't booby-trap land. It's a standard agricultural fence. Fully compliant with county regulations. Several residents stepped back from the wire. Someone whispered, I told you we should have checked. Linda marched toward me. This event has been planned for months. Not with my permission. It's always been held here. And it's always been trespassing. Silence fell heavier than the humidity. Yes. She called the sheriff again. Deputy Miller returned. This time, he looked tired before he even stepped out of his vehicle. What happened now? Linda launched into a dramatic retelling. He electrified a shared greenbelt. Deputy Miller walked to the fence. Read the signage. Examined the grounding rods. Is it within legal voltage limits? He asked me. Yes, sir. I handed him the installation certificate and county compliance form. He reviewed it, nodded, then turned to Linda. Ma'am, this fence is lawful, but people could get hurt. It's clearly marked. You can't restrict community access. He gave her a long look. I've already addressed the ownership issue. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. The illusion was cracking. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No dramatic wood-paneled walls. No booming judge with a gavel addiction. Just beige paint, fluorescent lights, and the quiet hum of bureaucracy. But tension doesn't need theatrics. It just needs truth and someone who's been lying. Linda sat at the plaintiff's table in a navy blazer, posture stiff, lips pressed thin. 2 remaining HOA board members sat behind her, looking like men who had recently updated their resumes. Daniel sat beside me, calm as ever, flipping through a binder thick with tabbed sections. Relax, he murmured. They asked for this. Linda's attorney opened first. He painted a dramatic picture, a long-standing community tradition, a hostile property owner, an unnecessarily dangerous electrified barrier, emotional and physical harm. He used the phrase weaponized fencing. I almost smiled. Then Daniel stood. He didn't raise his voice, didn't posture. He simply handed the judge 3 documents: my recorded deed, the official survey, the county compliance certificate for the fence. Your Honor, he said evenly, there is no recorded easement, no legal right of access, no contractual agreement. The plaintiff is attempting to manufacture shared ownership where none exists. The judge adjusted her glasses. Ms. Whitmore, she said, do you have a recorded easement? Linda shifted in her seat. We have board-approved integration plans. That was not my question. Silence. Her attorney cleared his throat. There is no recorded easement at this time. The judge nodded once. Injunction denied. Just like that. The fence stayed. But we weren't done. Because Daniel stood again. Your Honor, we request permission to proceed with counterclaims and formal discovery. Granted. And that's when Linda realized this wasn't a quick scare tactic anymore. This was exposure. 30 days later, the HOA's financial records arrived. 4 banker boxes. Daniel and I went through them page by page. And there it was. Buried in the annual budgets under Greenbelt Enhancement and Trail Maintenance, landscaping services, lighting, rentals, event permits, pathway maintenance fees, total over 8 years, for a trail that legally sat entirely on my property. A trail they did not own. A trail they had no rights to. Daniel leaned back slowly. Well, he said, that's not good for them. Is it fraud? Potentially misrepresentation. Possibly misuse of HOA funds. At minimum, breach of fiduciary duty. Translation: board members can be held personally liable. Now things were nuclear. If you've never watched someone unravel under oath, it's fascinating. Linda entered the deposition room confident. She left looking like she'd aged 5 years. Daniel was surgical. Ms. Whitmore, when did you first become aware there was no recorded easement? I assumed one existed. After the sheriff's visit, and yet you continued to represent the land as shared community property. We believed it was historically used. Did you inform residents that no legal documentation supported that? Did you continue collecting trail maintenance fees after discovering the lack? Answer the question, please. You could almost hear the air leave the room.